No discussion of talking about user accounts would be complete without talking about the root account a little bit. Now we're going to talk about security later on in the course, but we want to touch on it a little bit here so that you know that the root account is a special account and it should be used in a special way. So we're going to cover some things about managing the root account. Now the root account, or the super user account as some people call it, should be used very sparingly, even by people who have access to it, the administrators of the box. The reason we say that is that any process that runs while a user is logged in as root runs with root's permissions, and as we know, root can do some dangerous things to the system. It has complete control over the system, so we really don't want that to happen, some dangerous things to happen while root is logged in. So you should normally use an ordinary user account whenever possible and only log into root when you need it. Now of course there are times when you need to be able to log in as root, or at least have root access in order to be able to perform certain actions. There's a couple of utilities built in so that you can change to root's login and root's permissions without logging out and logging back in as root. And those two utilities are the su or su and sudo, and you can use those instead of logging in directly as root. And we'll talk about those right now. Okay, we're in our FreeBSD virtual machine, and what I'd like to do right now is log in as Billy. We have been logging in as root up until now, and we need to start changing that a little bit and using the su and sudo commands. So we're logged in as Billy, and Billy's default shell of course is bash, and we can see that because bash uniquely displays the username there. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to change to the root account without logging in. And I can use the su command to do that. Now I don't necessarily want to do anything special, but what I might want to do is have root's profile, because some of root's profile is important to have if you're going to run commands as root, path and so forth, because just running su and running a command may not help. We also want to get in the habit of using root's profile normally. So we'll su and put the dash there, and it's going to say sorry, bad su, Billy to root. It means he couldn't su because he's not allowed to. Now how does someone get allowed to log in as root? Just a normal user can't do it. Well, what we have to do is we need to have somebody standing there with us that is the root account, or we have to log in as root in order to make this change to Billy's account so he can do it. So let's log in, and we're going to log in as root now. And now that we're logged in as root, what we want to do is we want to look at two things. First of all, let's look at /etc/pam.d directory /su. And as you can see, this basically has the defaults for the SU service. It allows us to set certain things for people who can log in using the SU and SUing to root's account. You might want to edit that file if you think there are some different settings you want in there, but you don't necessarily have to. In order to give Billy the permissions he needs, what we need to do is simply type in pw usermod and Billy's name, and we want to make him a member of the wheel group. By default, the wheel group is a special maintenance group, and people who are in the wheel group have the ability to log in, or rather to SU as root. So we're going to put him in there, and now they're in there. And let's go ahead and exit out, and we're going to exit out of root's login, and that's going to give us back to Billy's login. And as you figured out already, we can have multiple logins for a session, or we could have simply changed virtual terminals and logged in as root on another virtual terminal if we didn't want Billy to see what we were doing. So now that we're back in Billy's account, how can we achieve the root login here? We actually can go su dash, and now instead of telling us we can't do it, it's going to ask us for our password. We're going to need a password to confirm that that's what we want to do. So we're going to log in as root, put our password in, not root's password but our password, and hit enter. And guess what? Now we're root. Now we can perform some things if we like, perform some commands, we can add users, do other things that only root can do, and so forth. And now that we've done those things that only root can do, let's log out and get back to our normal account. How do we do that? By hitting the exit command, or typing an exit command rather. And so now we're just Billy again, and we have normal user abilities. Now the problem with SU is that once you've SU'd, you can do anything you want, and that's good because you may need to do several things, but you may want to not allow Billy to do everything that root can do. So it's not like you have a choice between Billy's permissions or full root. There's actually something in between you can use, and that's where sudo comes in. And we're going to cover sudo a little bit more in depth when we talk about security, but basically the sudo command allows you to assign certain users only certain root privileges, so they can only do certain things. That way they don't have all of root's privileges, just the minimum they need to get along. And basically they type in the word sudo and the command, and that's all they can do. And they are prompted by a password, And the good thing about sudo is that it's logged. So when a user uses sudo, there's an accountability log that shows exactly what they did and when. So later you can go back and say, hey, Billy, you did this as root, so you're the one responsible for this. You're the one who messed this up, or you're the one who made this change. So sudo is a much better way to do this than just su, but su is even better than just logging in as root. We'll cover sudo a little bit later in the course when we talk about security, and you'll see why it's probably the best way to assume root privileges when you're a normal user. So we've covered a little bit about the root account and how you should manage it, how you should not be logging into it all the time, and we talked about using su instead.